Hi everyone. So I just thought I'd start you off with um, what is permaculture and the origins of permaculture. Just for a first video, just to get the ball rolling with your permaculture knowledge. So right underneath what is permaculture, we have caring for earth, people, and fair share of resources. These are the three permaculture ethics. Caring for the earth is about caring for the ecosystem, the environment in which we live in. One of the biggest issues we have today is that our farming, our modern style of farming, is degenerative, which means that it leaves the soil and the ecosystem a lot worse off than what it was before, basically. The way that we farm is by using monoculture systems, which is systems where we farm one single species of plant. That plant takes certain nutrients from the soil, it extracts it from the ground, and then we harvest it, which means we are taking the nutrients from the ground. We've got nothing to put it back in, because that plant, for example, barley and wheat, I mean, you've seen the fields of them. There's a mass amount of plants there, and they're all taking that single nutrient from the soil. Most of the time it's nitrogen, because plants need nitrogen. And yeah, so they take that from the soil, and there's nothing there to put it back except for chemical fertilizers, which we use nowadays, which actually ends up depleting the soil. Also, the use of pesticides, kill off the insects, etc., etc. And this is all stuff we can get into at a later date. Don't want to go too deep into it right now, but just to give you an idea of why caring for the earth is in the permaculture ethics. People care is about caring for ourselves, our community, our families, and for humanity as a whole. It's really important we do that, because without people care, we won't be able to work together well. And if you're not in a good mood, if you've got a lot of negative thoughts, and if you're not working through your own stuff, then you're probably going to be carrying around a lot of negativity, and a lot of stress, anxiety, and stuff like this. So it's important that we work through our emotions and do our best to help ourselves in regards to like eating well, exercising, spending time with our friends, also managing our thoughts well, with things like meditation, yoga, etc. Caring for the fair share of resources is really important. I mean, since I can remember, there's been people that are starving in a world where we could solve world hunger. Like, I think it was like 10 times over the last time I heard, and there's a lot of billionaires in the world, so I don't see how we can't just give fair share of resources. It's quite obvious to me, but that's a really important principle in permaculture as well. So them three principles, earth care, people care, and fair share, underpin what permaculture stands for. So in permaculture, we want to integrate all aspects of living. And what we mean by this is that permaculture takes responsibility for the ecological factors, social factors, economical, psychological, political factors. Basically, in permaculture design, we're not taking a narrow mind. We're looking at how our design, what we do in the future, what we're about to implement, how that actually affects things around us. For example, an example of how we don't do this in the modern world is through new build sites, so the new homes. They don't take into consideration the ecological factors, I don't feel, enough, because they destroy the topsoil and they level out the land, and the soil becomes very clay-like because it's been compacted down by all the machinery. And also a lot of natural habitats have been cleared to make room for the roads, the houses, the buildings, etc. So I don't feel that it takes in enough consideration into the ecological factors. And that's something that we really care for in permaculture, just by seeing how we've been doing it. It's quite obvious that we need to change our approach and take more of an approach that steps back and does look at all of them different factors. Growing food and trading locally, it's really important because of food mileage, also to connect the community, and growing food locally with our neighbours. So it means that it's more of a resilient system, and yeah, I feel that it's something that we miss because we've got big corporations that feel much more convenient. Yeah, and the issues that we're getting from that is food that tastes like water and doesn't have much nutrients in. So yeah, I think there could be big improvements that we can make there, and it really excites me actually, because growing your own food is awesome. And if your neighbour's growing, if he's got tons of carrots and you've got tons of parsnips, you can trade. And maybe there's room for setting up platforms like that as well, where we can create these systems where we can trade together, instead of relying so heavily on big corporations. I mean, what happens if that corporation shuts down? Where are we going to get our food from? We're going to have to start rationing and stuff like this, but also eating healthy, and that's what it's about as well. And it's about healing our soils, and we can do that through the food that we grow. We can eat much healthier food, and we can actually rejuvenate our environment. Conscious design, so basically in short, all of the design processes in permaculture are analyze, action, and feedback. That's them in short. Some of the design processes are Sadimet, so SADIMET, CEAP, CEAP, the 4 Ds, and obredimet, so OBREDIMET. And I'll talk more about the design methods, in another video because it's quite a big subject. Creating abundance. So I don't know if you've ever seen food forests, or the edible landscapes that permaculture creates, but they're extremely abundant places. We base our designs on natural ecosystems which are naturally abundant. So hopefully you've all been into a forest, and the forest is filled with different layers of shrubs. So you've got ground cover, you've got small shrubs, medium, large shrubs, you've got big trees, you've got medium small, medium, large trees. You've got vines. You've also got fungi as well. So you've got all these different inputs into the forest, all these things growing out of the forest. And all we're doing in permaculture is taking that or observing that natural ecosystem and just altering it for a human need. In a lot of the cases, it's for food and medicinal plants, and also building materials, plants like bamboo, and also plants that maintain the ecosystem. For example, nitrogen fixers are really important. So no harmful chemicals. We don't use harmful chemicals in permaculture. We definitely don't use pesticides, herbicides, or any of the other nasty weed killers and stuff like this. It's not good to use. It's not good to put around the food that you're going to be eating, because you're going to be eating them chemicals. It's not good to put into the soil. It degenerates the soil, and again, it will seep into the food. It will also kill off the insects and animals as well. It's not healthy for them either. So some questions that I get in permaculture is, how do you deal with pests, and how do you input natural fertilizers then if you're not using pesticides and herbicides and the other harmful fertilizers? Well, there's a few things we can do here. Again, it's quite a big video, but I'll just mention a few things. So no dig method of permaculture gardening is basically where you put organic matter on top of the ground. Another word here is mulching as well, so you might hear that word a lot. Basically, it means taking organic matter and just putting it straight on top of the ground. So by organic matter, I mean leaves and dead plants. You can also use horse manure, like different types of manure, and cardboard as well is a great one for stopping weeds. So a classic one would be like horse manure and compost, and then cardboard over the top, and then plant through the cardboard. But I've also seen people do it the opposite way as well: cardboard first, then horse manure and compost. I think both probably works equally well. Also, incorporating insect and animal cycles to your designs, to your gardens, will really help, because your plants get eaten by insects, especially if they are left vulnerable, and because you've got an abundance in the modern way of farming, you've got an abundance of a singular crop. So as soon as you get an insect that loves that particular crop, I mean, he's got an abundance, he's got a massive field, he can feed his family, he can make a big community, and they can all have a party in the field. So one way to get around this is polyculture. So it is the exact opposite of a monoculture. So polyculture is where you have a load of different plants, biodiversity, and ideally you would want to be companion planting as well. And companion planting is a method to detract pests away. It is a method to create more harmonious relationships within the ecosystem. So using nitrogen fixers next to a plant that takes a lot of nitrogen from the soil, for example. And yeah, that's all I want to say on that. Minimal intervention. So we look to do the least effort for the maximum effect. I don't know if you've heard of the 80-20 principle. It's normally referred to in a business scenario. It's also exactly the same as permaculture. I like to refer to it in permaculture. So this will mean putting 20% effort for an 80% result. It also means to step back and take time to observe and yeah, so it's best, what we're trying to do in permaculture is we're trying to create permanent ecosystems, permanent culture, and the plants work much better when we're not heavily maintaining them, because we don't want to create a system that causes heavy maintenance, because it causes a lot of effort to do that. And it takes a lot of our time, and we're all quite busy people these days, so we want a system that allows us to intervene much less, or minimal intervention. It's basically like a lot of people say permaculture is a lazy way of gardening, and I think it's a really intelligent way of gardening, and that's why you can be lazy with it. Obviously, you'll still have to do a lot of things with it, and you'd probably want to as well, because you'd probably be out there spending time in the garden. It's just that we're trying to create ecosystems that maintain themselves, ideally, and ecosystems that rejuvenate the soil for us, so we don't have to keep adding different fertilizers in, etc. And on that subject is observation. So taking a step back, non-action. This is all about assessing the sites, analysing. It's the analysing stage of conscious design. So before we do the action and feedback, we analyse, we observe, receive all the data, and then we make a conscious decision on what we can do. And this allows us to, it gives us time to make the best decision we can for ourselves, for the ecosystem, and it goes back to taking responsibility for all the different factors in life, rather than jumping ahead and possibly making big mistakes. So permaculture is permanent culture, and the agri there is because we're creating agricultural systems that are permanent. So these systems are resilient, and they're regenerative. And the reason why they're resilient is because we are creating polycultures, which the plants are assisting each other. We have symbiotic relationships and companion plants that are thriving next to each other, helping each other thrive, and creating an ecosystem which is difficult to penetrate, which is difficult to harm, because there's so many different plants in there that are helping each other against certain pests, against certain chemicals from the soil that they need, for example. Yeah, okay. And regenerative, so massive word in permaculture, big buzzword is regenerative there. it is what it says on the tin. It's creating ecosystems that are regenerative, that are not just sustainable, because sustainable means that it's like sustaining, right? But regenerative is that. So the origins of permaculture, I just wanted to read you out a section from Permaculture Design Companion. I did this in a gathering which we just had, and I was thinking about just creating an explanation myself, but it actually has a good enough explanation in here, so I just thought of reading that, and I'll read it to you now as well. In the early 1970s, the myths of economic growth driven by fossil fuels received a wake-up call. Oil prices quadrupled in 1 year, a 4-day week for industry was imposed, and domestic electricity was rationed in Britain. The Club of Rome, a distinguished group of international economists, published a report, Limits to Growth, which called into question fundamental assumptions on an oil-based economy and the promise of perpetual growth. Ecological collapses, species extinction, and pollution were more and more evident and blatantly caused by our industries and land use. The great social changes already underway for civil rights, peace, and disarmament were joined by a growing green movement, and at a governmental level, sustainable development was born. Meanwhile, in the Australian bush, Bill Mollison was carefully observing the natural systems around him. Bill had worked on the vast felling of forestry plantations as a young man and saw how void of life they were and how much energy they required to sustain and harvest. In contrast, Bill observed the wild rainforest, with its complex web of interactions, creating zero waste, requiring zero oil inputs, and yet producing diverse habitats and thrival for a wealth of species. Nearby, David Holmgren, a young student of environmental design, was exploring radical ways to solve problems in this field. Together with Bill, they created a body of work that moulded wild abundant systems to meet human needs without the use of fossil fuels. Permaculture was born in the form of the book Permaculture 1 in 1978. Grounded in the earth sciences and general systems of theory, they applied their methods on a landscape scale, identifying solutions for the vast expanse of the Australian continent, designing for minimum input and maximum output. However, the concepts of permaculture are applicable on any scale, as the founders intended. Today, many of the best examples of permaculture design are found in city gardens, small homes, limited space being a good impetus to careful and intelligent design. So there you go. So Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, said to be the founders of permaculture. And yeah, that book Permaculture 1 as well. So have a look into that, and I'm pretty sure it is still for sale, so you'll be able to find it online, and it is a good book as well. That's about all I wanted to do today. So yeah, I've got a permaculture excuse me. I have a permaculture group on Facebook and on Telegram. This is for the Permaculture Inspiration Gathering. I'll be doing courses. So permaculture introduction courses, speciality courses. We have a gathering at the moment which is fortnightly in Glastonbury. We're going to set one up in Bristol, which should be starting this week on Thursday, and then that will be fortnightly as well. And yeah, other than that, keep up to date. Feel free to join the groups as well. and yeah, I look forward to the next videos that I do, and I look forward to hearing your comments. If you've got any comments, if you want to learn anything, let me know, and I can share what I know on the subject. And if you have any questions, then I'll do my best to answer them. And yeah, much love.